Well, it's important that we understand the urgency you have to play with, but for them, they can attack you in so many different ways. They can attack you in full court scenarios, offensively and defensively. They can do it in a half court in so many different ways. So, we're going to have to be really locked in and really attentive to details, and then compete at a really high level.
Oregon and Ohio State are two teams that are sort of remarkably similar in how teams score against them. About 27% points come from 3, 55% from 2. How do you think that matchup favors your team?
Which matchup?
They've got similar characteristics.
Right. Well, I think, ultimately, I think this is kind of where you're going with it. I think what we try to do after each game is evaluate what we did well in that game, what we learned in that game, what we have to continue to grow in that game, and then work to apply that lesson to the next game, whether that's ball screen defense, whether that's how we attack offensively, whether that's whatever it is, finish plays. And so what we try to do is obviously carry those lessons forward into the next matchup. And a lot of times you see that there's some similarities between teams, or at least you try to find them to the best of your ability so that you can continue to have continuity and growth throughout the season.
Sophie, I know we haven't had a chance to talk to you yet, but the opportunity to play that extra year, were you pretty confident that was going to happen, or was that one of those things that you just never know until you know?
You never know till you know. I've had it described where, it kind of depends on which side of the bed the NCAA wakes up in the morning on. So it was a 50-50 shot, but our compliance staff here did an amazing job compiling all different sorts of things for, I don't want to say evidence-based, but I felt like they did a good job at making it hard for the NCAA to say no. So, I need to give a big shout out to them.
Is it for you relief, excitement, glad it's over, excited that, you got another bite at the apple next year?
Yeah, it's definitely a relief. Just renewed my lease the other day, that kind of thing. All those little factors that you don't think about, but kind of stressing. But definitely excited to be back for another year.
Coach, what have you liked about the defense that you guys have been playing in recent games? It seems like you've done a really good job of taking the other team's primary scorer out of their comfort zone. What's been the key to that?
Well, when you go back and you watch some of the possessions, and when you compare the possessions from the Iowa game to the Indiana game, I think what we did a better job of in the Indiana game was, again, carrying some of those lessons over from one to another. Both teams shoot it at a really high percentage from the arc, and we didn't get to some of those opportunities early in the Iowa game. We did a better job in the Indiana game of understanding. But when you go back and you watch it, what I think was really good in that game is there were sometimes there were just seamless switches, but they weren't necessarily predicated switches. It was someone was getting beat, and so now all of a sudden there's a back screen we get beat in. We switch the back screen because our teammate was beat, but then all of a sudden now Mal, who switched the back screen, is guarding the point guard, and all of a sudden there's a ball screen with the point guard and the post kid. Well, it's Mal and it's Ani, so then it just makes sense to switch it again. And so now then you have to help because all of a sudden Ani's got matched up with the point guard. So now other players are helping in a little bit more, which means now there's a shooter open on the other side because you're helping off of that shooter. Then somebody else has to help that kid. And so I thought what we did a better job than we probably have all season was in the past maybe one or two players understood how to help each other in that situation. But in that game, I thought there were many possessions where we had 4 or 5 players on the same page. The hard part in the Big Ten is when you don't have all 5 players on the same page and all of a sudden the post kid's rolling to the basket and you don't help it, now they're wide open. And we got beaten that a couple times. And then there are other possessions we did a good job. So I think for us, it's not necessarily one aspect that's really important. It is everybody on the floor has to really be connected to help each other at a really high level. And we had some of those possessions in that Indiana game.
Especially in the fourth quarter, right? I mean, even at a time when the offense kind of went cold and you were not making shots, you still were able to maintain a comfortable lead.
We were. You go back and you look at the fourth quarter, and for us offensively, and I think we had at least 6 opportunities at the rim that we wish we could have made a few of those. You make half of those, you feel a lot better. We had 2 open arc shots. We had a good pull-up, and we didn't make any of those opportunities. And then on top of it, we had a charge call, and we had 2 turnovers late. And so the combination offensively was pretty tough. So a lot of times, you're not sure if your defense is good enough to hold you in that situation, and our defense was in that game. Now, you got to go back and you got to replicate. That takes a lot of energy and awareness and finishing plays.
With Ohio State, I mean, they have such a threat in Sheldon on the outside, right?
She's for Ohio State right now. Cody McMahon's their leading scorer, and then their freshman kid, the Cambridge kid, who is I've coached some fast players in the past. Cambridge is about she might be the fastest player ever seen play. It's amazing. And then you've got Gray who's hitting shots and Theory who's hitting arc shots at a 52% clip. And then, their post kids can score it around the rim and they're really athletic. So they provide so many different challenges for us. It's going to be really important that we're really connected like we have to be. Otherwise, we're not in a position where we can, and not many teams are, just lock them down one-on-one. That's really hard.
You know, it's so hard to win on the road in the Big Ten to begin with. This will be your third top 10 road opponent. But do you think you guys take anything from what you learned in California? Take a step forward in this one?
I definitely think we learned. We learned a great deal, I thought, from game one against USC in the way that we attacked offensively and we were really aggressive, but maybe we weren't we didn't make as good of decisions as we needed to early offensively, and then that hurt us because now you're in a spot where you're playing against really fast players or really athletic teams, and now all of a sudden they get going in transition, which is where they're really good. And there are a lot of similarities with Ohio State in that situation. So we have to learn from it. It gives us an opportunity to go back and try that again, practice it again.
So you obviously had that stretch entering Indiana, 2 top 5 teams, then an Iowa team that had just come off of beating UCLA. What sort of development did you see in your team through that stretch? Less on the technical aspect, but more in sort of the mental game, the mentality.
Well, I do believe this about our team, and I've said it many times, but I think they have a very high desire to do well, right? And I think who wouldn't? All of us want to do well in whatever it is that we're doing, but then there's an absolute toughness component that has to accompany that in order for you to take steps forward and continue to move along the process to get to where you are trying to get to. And this group there is a toughness component to it. The Big Ten is the best conference in women's basketball by far, not necessarily by far, but every team you play just gives you so many incredible challenges. Incredible on both ends of the court. So you have to play with such an incredible amount of toughness, tenacity on every single possession, because as soon as you let down in one aspect, you pay, right? That's how good teams are. Sometimes you don't even let down and they make you pay. They just score over the top of you, or they go get a rebound over the top of you, or whatever the case is. You didn't see them coming, and all of a sudden they're there to block a shot. Those are the type of teams we're playing against. So there has to be. This group has an incredible resilience factor to them and a toughness factor, but that's going to be tested again by an Ohio State team that's coming back home, after their tough trip out to the West Coast, each one of us has to make one of those tough trips. Whatever group of teams you're playing, that's a really challenging trip. And now they come back, and so I'm sure that we're going to play against a team that is zipping and raring to go, and so we've got to find a way to match that or exceed that intensity to the best of our level. We're not going to exceed their athleticism because that's their forte. That's their advantage that they have, and it's a major advantage that they have over us. So we have to find other ways to try to compete against a very athletic team.
Sophie, how much does it help with that resiliency, with that toughness, that in this day and age where people are flying all over the place, you had that core pretty much together. You, Maya, and Mallory were so big last time out against Indiana. How much does it help with that resilience and toughness that Dawn's asking for, that you sort of know who you're relying on?
Yeah, I mean, both of them are super tough. I would say all of our players are. And you know who you can rely on. We've been playing together for a couple of years now. And so you kind of know what to expect. And, if they're not bringing it, you can bring them up to the level that, you have to. But just knowing what, kind of like that toughness that Donnie P talked about, knowing that you have that, it's super fun to play with.
Dawn, same question for you. Just the fact that you maybe can demand that toughness and resilience. You're a little more from a team that has that cohesion, that has that experience, that a lot of teams just don't have the luxury of having these days in college basketball.
Well, I go back to that example of possession, the one possession in the Indiana game, and that was just one example of covering up and helping for each other. And it matters that you have it helps with that connectiveness when you you believe that when at the end of the Indiana game, there were some stagger screens we got caught in, right? And so now all of a sudden there's one that Tori gets caught in and Grace helps her out. But if Grace doesn't trust that Tori's going to see that she's helping her out, all of a sudden you have two kids running at the shooter and you've got someone wide open at the rim and you're playing against a team that takes care of the ball at a high level. And if you don't trust that she's going to take your kid, you're going to give up a layup. And so that part of it, that connectiveness is really important to have that trust, and there's the familiarity that goes into having that trust, and you need to have that at this point in time. You need to in order to compete in the Big Ten, you have to have that belief in each other, that trust in each other, and then you also have to be able to back it up and do it every single possession, which is it's asking a lot. It is. It's really hard.
Just talk about the path that Tori's taken as a freshman, thrown into the mix. Probably asked to do more than she thought she would when the season started. Started out so strong. I think teams kind of realized what they had. And how is her growth? At what stage is she at in your mind?
Well, I think she's someone who plays, and you guys have all seen her, and you know how hard she plays. She plays with an incredible amount of tenacity, and we keep talking about slowing down, and now we have to keep talking about staying on the court, right? Because that's really important. And she just seems to pick up one or two fouls each game going after a loose ball that's right there, that there's contact, and she's strong. And so when when there's contact, the other kid falls a lot of times, and so now all of a sudden the foul's on Tori. Where if Tori falls, maybe that's a 50-50 ball, maybe there's not a call, maybe they both fall, maybe the foul's on the other kid. So now the next, I think, step for Tori is understanding there are times you just kind of have to let a play go, because being on the court is valuable to us, because you add a defensive component, a rebounding component, an ability to attack the rim component type of thing. And so, I don't know what that puts her in her stage, but I think that's a next level of her development for us, because she helps us in a lot of ways. And we'll look at some film today. Obviously yesterday was off, so we'll take a look at some film today of one or two things from a technical standpoint that she can grow in. And she's someone that when you do that, when you show her something along those lines, she is locked in at the highest level. She is such a smart player, but she's also such a smart person. Like she can see it and then she can go do it, and she cares so much, and that's again a characteristic of this team. So she'll learn, she'll keep getting better, because it means a lot to her.
I want to ask one last question about Grace. It seems like the ball's in her hand a lot more as the season's gone on in terms of initiating the offense. Her assist totals have really gone up. She's not shooting as much, it seems. Is that an issue? Do you want to get her more catch-and-shoot looks than she's getting now, which seems a lot of her shots are coming off her own dribble?
Well, if you look at, when we talk a lot about how much Mara does or did for our program when she was on the court, and that in some way. So here's a person who's taking the ball out of bounds, against pressure situations. And so now that's not a kid that you're advancing to at that point in time to shoot it. Now she's a kid that it has to come back to. And when it comes back to, a lot of times you're getting into your offense, you're initiating your offense in that way. So I think she's someone who other teams have really high awareness of her too as a shooter. So it's not like she's getting as many open looks because the teams are really aware of her. I think she's handling all that with a great deal of composure. And while she's doing all of that, she's also doing more for us on the defensive end. So, she had the assignment early on of guarding Garzon, which in the past, in year one, in her freshman year, more often than not, we'd match her up with someone who is more of a primary driver. Well, a lot of teams have players that do both, are really good at both, or now it's like, okay, what's the best matchup? Late in the game, when we had some different matchups out there, her job was to then guard the point guard, and so she is someone who is incredibly versatile and is helping us in a lot of different ways. So if that means she's not shooting quite as much, but she's doing all those other things, that's a development piece for us, and it's a development piece for her, and she's doing, I think, a fantastic job with all of it. Would we love to get her more open arc shots? Yeah. So if we can find a way to do all of that and that too, then yes, we will do that. That would be a great idea.
Had at least 3 double-digit scores in every game except Louisiana, Jackson State, and UCLA. You can't say the same about other Big Ten teams close by in the standings. What's helping you get that scoring diversity?
Well, I think if you go back to the Indiana game, I think our players are incredibly versatile. I think they share the ball, they all pass the ball, move the ball, but in that game, specifically in the Indiana game, you saw a number of different players post up for us. Certainly, even in the third and fourth quarter, Mal posted up in transition. Has gotten the ball on the block. We go to Sophie quite a bit. Ani had a catch and face. Tori tried to post up. We just didn't give her the ball down low. Amai has the ability to do that at times, and that's just one aspect of the game. But I think that it kind of demonstrates the versatility and hopefully the equal opportunity mindedness of the way that we want to play. And so depending on how teams play us and what that looks like, I think we have players who can step up in a lot of different ways. We're not necessarily reliant on we need Sophie to do this for us or we need Mel to just do this for us. We have 5 players on the court that can make very positive things happen for us.
Thank you guys.
Great. Thank you.